James Brown, and she always calls Marty Ahmad Brown. So we're live now. Amen. Amen. Good morning and God bless everybody. We are blessed with a very special treat this morning to kick off our 120th anniversary week of worship and programming. We have been blessed this morning with Reverend Candace Wynn. She is joining us. She is a student orange specialist. She is a ministry consultant. She can tell you more about what she does than I do. Let me tell you something I know about consultants. Nobody knows what they does. That's why they charge so much. Hallelujah, thine the glory. I'm sure that applies in this case as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Reverend Candace. And I want you to know we have a very special connection here this morning. That's because all three of us were at one time ministers at the Emmanuel Temple in Pembroke Pines. And so Reverend Candace was my predecessor and Reverend Bernard Franklin was my successor. And Bernard is coming to us all the way from where in Germany, Bernard? Reverend Franklin?
Ramsbach,
Germany. So grateful for him and so grateful for Sister Candace who's coming from us from the ATL. I think that's what they officially named it now, since Keisha Lance Bottoms became mayor.
We got a mayor named Keisha.
I know, right? So now the name is obviously the ATL. So listen, I invited these two very, very gifted people in ministry to come on and be with us this morning because we are at an incredible time in our church's history, and that is that we have reached 120 years, and now it is time, during this landmark occasion, it's time for us to think about how to move forward. And the reason why I have these two people that are truly blessings, they have both been blessings to me in my ministry. Reverend Candace was such a tremendous help when we were starting off there at Emmanuel Temple. And Reverend Franklin was such a tremendous help when we were transitioning into the pastorate here at Mount Tabor Baptist Church. So y'all, these are my friends. These are my colleagues. I love them to death, more than they will ever know, because I'm just not like that. But I'm built a little different, but I do really appreciate and respect them. And if there's anything you guys would like to say to open us up.
Reverend Paris, I just want to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here today. Just grateful to be a part of this conversation. And Reverend Franklin, it's just so good to serve with you today, both of you.
Same here. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. And, I look up to you all. You guys set the path for me for the transition to full-time youth ministry and what the importance is to have somebody in that slot. So thank you all. I'm glad to be with you all on today.
And if I could just say one more thing, because Reverend Franklin is always so self-deprecating, but the fact of it is he is a very quiet and humble genius. And he knows how to navigate the waters of youth ministry in ways that most of us have not even considered or thought about. I'm thankful to you, man. And you talking about how much smarter and stuff. Man, nobody believe that mess. We already know who's the genius.
Exactly.
I don't know if y'all play golf, but every time you're on the golf course with somebody talking about how they can't play, they're gonna beat your butt. And that's how he is. So thankful to God for you, man. Thank the Lord for you. I just want to get into it just very quickly, and I wanted this to be very conversational, very, very free-flowing. What are the challenges for youth at this time of COVID?
For me, I'm really concerned about the mental health, well-being. Mental health and discipleship is what I'm concerned with. Here, with the community I serve as a military population, what we're seeing is a rise of caseloads that are coming through our chapel, kids that are getting into things they should not be getting into, and then overall, that desire for Christ. That desire to be plugged into the local church, plugged into some type of ministry is going by the wayside. they need an outlet. This Sunday, I really watched my son. We were in service, and I'm normally no electronics, let's focus and let's be engaged in worship. But a little boy was with him with a Nintendo Switch. And we got, we follow the rules over here. We 6 feet. And I just had to let him have his moment because he needed that connection. And I really, as much as I wanted to, and somebody tried to give him a sermon note sheet, which I made myself, but I just had to lean into the fact that's not what he needed at that moment.
Right.
And he needed that interaction. So for me, it's mental health and the need for discipleship.
Mental health and the need for discipleship. Sister Reverend Candy,
Yeah. I think the genius said it all. A huge part of it. A lot of what I was thinking. The whole, and I think also just navigating it as I'm not necessarily I don't work in youth ministry within the context of a church anymore. I'm work more so with other youth pastors. So a lot of my experience and my thoughts are through the lenses of others and through the conversations in which that I've heard from just people that I've been in conversation with. But also I'm a parent. My children my daughter is 4.5. If I said she was 4, she would probably give me this, you know how the kids get, right? And my son is 7. So, I work directly with youth pastors, so middle school and high school. But then my children are, younger elementary. And just from the things that just very, very similar situations happening over here, what Reverend Franklin said, the things you weigh as a parent, we follow those guidelines, but sometimes the kids just need that social connectivity, so you got to sometimes just okay, how am I going to navigate this, keeping everybody safe, but still giving them what they need, and I know a lot of parents are toying with that, but I think that some of the students who are a bit older, middle school and high school, they have the ability to look up things on their own. They can find out information about what's happening. They can follow the news. Sometimes they might not necessarily really be able to process it, understand it. Some parents don't always know what their kids know, and what their kids are looking up and how closely they might be following things. So there might be a disconnect within families when it comes to just the knowledge there, right? So what I say youth need is the parents sitting down and talking with them and having consistent conversations about what's happening and also how it impacts their faith and where they feel God is amid it all too. And the church should be a part of those conversations too, because the reality is, when Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and carrying heavy burdens," Jesus didn't mean just for the 18 and older crew. It was everybody. It was all kind of thing. And the more we're able to provide those opportunities, like Reverend Franklin said, to tend to our students' mental health, to tend to them and just disciple them, the better journey, because it's a challenging journey. It is one that I don't understand how people are able to navigate these times without faith, without God, right? So the more we can support families and then walking with their children, and then even the children and youth amid this, the greater success that we are having. The church doesn't necessarily have to. I'll hold off on that. But yeah.
Hold on.
It's a whole nother tangent. I'm probably talking for 10 more minutes, Reverend.
But I think you were going somewhere, and I think it was really good because one of the things that I've been wrestling with in this pandemic, as you get a chance to church hop and you listen to different ministers, is how are we changing our language to include the family? Making
That's
our
right.
homes a sanctuary. How we're saying, gather your children. Nobody's using these language of gather and centering the families. Nobody's looking at our singles and our marriage. Because truth be told, this is the longest some of us has ever been in a house with a spouse, the longest we've been with our children. I didn't realize, my flesh and blood, he got some smart math. I didn't realize how much of me was instilled in him. And it's those things that you got to figure out how to do it, or what happens when everybody needs to go outside and get some fresh air.
That's
and
so
just
real.
pull back. And so we don't use that language of, we pray on Sunday morning through the worship service, but what about that language of gather a prayer circle in your home? What is your Monday worship at home looks like in that discipleship? We use the word spiritual disciplines, but we're not teaching our families how do we do it. What does that look like? Because we might bow our heads, but our children don't know that we're praying. Or they see us on our phones, but they don't know that, hey, I'm doing an Instagram post for a church or for this chapel. So we have to be intentional about sharing and telling our children what we're doing to keep our faith going. I mean, some days I randomly blast gospel music in the morning just because, and just pray my wife don't wake up, just so you know.
So what I'm hearing is there needs to be some faith intentionality.
Absolutely.
Faith intention. So I talk all the time about my parents. And growing up, two things struck me. My mom was our church's musician, so she was constantly exploring like gospel. Now, that gospel was mixed with the Motown sound and other things because she at one time sang professionally. But there was always gospel music being played in our house. There was always, this conversation about not only the lyrics but the meaning behind it. My father was a seminarian and chairman of deacon board, Sunday school superintendent, then became a minister. So there was always with him, and I speak about it with all of those things that he talked about. Off camera, we were talking about this conversation with credentials, and I'm not trying to list credentials, but despite all of his credentials and experiences, the thing that I remember most about my father growing up is that every single night I saw him fall asleep reading his Bible. Every single night. That's faith intentionality. Now, he wasn't doing that so that I could see, but I saw because he was doing it every single night. And when I was older, I'd have to go and get him out of his chair and wake him up to get him to go to bed because he would fall asleep in his chair with the TV on, watching, whatever, and reading the scripture. So now, because I'm something of a techie. I'm significantly older than you guys, but still something of a techie, and I read my scriptures on my phone. So now my kids see me looking at my phone. They don't know whether I'm on Instagram. They don't know whether I'm on Facebook. They don't know whether I'm on TikTok. They just see me looking at my phone. But most of the time I'm reading my scriptures. I even write most of my sermons. I write jotting down stuff on my notes on my phone because it's going to be on all of my devices. So, there's got to be, and I'm glad you said that, Reverend Franklin, about, setting up circle prayer time with the family. That's not something that we normally do because we've been so used to being able to just kind of relegate that to when we go to church.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when I was at the school and Reverend Candace was over with the pastor's wife at Mount Hermon, we would take our children. They were little. We would take our children over there. There was just an amazing youth ministry that she had developed there. And so, it was easy to just kind of say, and the boys would come back and talk about what Reverend Candace had taught them and what they did and all this other stuff. So it was just kind of easy to outsource religious or faith intentionality to the church. But now we can't do that. Now it must be taught in the home. Is that what
you're hitting on so much, and that's where I pulled back right there. Right there. I guess we're just going to dive right in, and I'm glad you mentioned that piece of technology because that's a struggle that I have too with using my phone. And there are times when I have to intentionally force myself to pick up the tangible Bible just so for the sake of my children seeing me, one, read, and then two, just knowing what it is that I'm reading and engaging and knowing that it's not just technology, because we have limits for their technology and they don't think that I have limits for myself. They don't realize that I'm not just playing games on my phone, but I'm actually being productive, right? But then also think about it, like, you mentioned with your the Reverend Franklin mentioned blasting gospel music throughout his house. My mom used to do the same thing, right? And now within the age of Bluetooth headphones, we can go internal and our kids don't always hear what it is that we're listening to. So I have even had to force myself to take my headphones out, let them hear it. I'm not watching church in my headphones. I'm gonna watch it with my family, in on whatever device it is that's in the house, because it's so important for them to be able to just either if it's over your head, because you're not developmentally able to understand what's being said, you're going to catch some things in the wind, right? Because I believe in that. I totally believe in you catching some things in the wind. I think too far the church, this is the point that I was going to make earlier, but I think that about a year ago, Easter of last year, rather, not quite a year just yet, but Easter Sunday, I was just, spending some time reflecting and just thinking about, what Easter really means and how we celebrate the veil being torn, right? We celebrate having that direct access to God, and how, that's one of the many blessings that Jesus did is Jesus tore that veil and allowed us commoners to have direct access to God and be able to approach God ourselves. We no longer had to go through these purity rituals, to purify ourselves, before we step into the holy place, because we realize that God is all around us, right? But far too long, the church has continued to be that veil and stand in that medium. And some people don't know how to really engage God unless they're being prayed into it, preached into it, or sung into God's Holy Spirit, with the Holy Spirit around them. And so what the church's responsibility is now is to really, really, like you were mentioning, just equipping families to be those faith leaders. The church's responsibility really is to just teach how to have practice spiritual disciplines. Let kids need to see their parents doing it. Families need to teach their children how to engage in it and engaging in it together, proactively. And the church should probably do a really good job of equipping people to do that, teaching them, how to fish for themselves, especially if we're going to survive this day and age of continue to survive this age of COVID that we're living in, because people never really were able to wait until Sunday morning to get a word, really. But we really, even more so today, need to be able to equip people to how to access God's word Wednesday at 4:12 p.m. when all stuff is breaking loose and falling apart around you, even within your own home, when you've got a meeting on Zoom and your kids are cutting up because they don't want to go do their assignment or whatever. We really need to be just being more intentional about equipping families to know how to engage the God in it. There's so many more people today who are struggling with questions of theodicy. It's like, where is God amid all of this? A lot of people are, even people who are in ministry are struggling with it. The ones that I talk with. So we, the church, need to be willing to engage in those conversations. Children ask some of the most remarkable questions, and honestly, they scare me. And theologically trained, I'm fully ordained. I've been in ministry for a long time. When my daughter opens her mouth and asks me a question, I'm like, okay, relax is the first step. Just relax. Hear the question and process it together. And if you don't know the answer, being willing to say, hey, I don't know, let's call someone else, and figure out how we can navigate this conversation together. So, I mean, yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of it, though, is how do we do God talk in this COVID environment, but also being real and intentional and relational with our students, our kids, because it makes you think. And also, how do we change our thought process on some of our traditions? What does the Bible really say about this? How do we stretch and reimagine ministry and what God is saying and what he's doing in the midst of this? And then you kept saying the word equip, and it made me think, hold on, that's what the Bible said in the beginning. Equip the saints to do ministry. One of my mentors in Texas told me this. He said, my parishioners should work me out of a job. And I looked crazy. I was like, what? He said, yes. Because
if say that again. Say that again. I'm sorry. Say that again.
That the parishioners really should be working the pastor out of a job, because we're equipping the saints to do ministry. And then also, as you were talking, the scripture clearly defines that suffer not thy little children. But we have our earphones on. I might be catching 2 or 3 sermons a day. A pastor we all know got me on Audible, so I'd be trying to catch me a book every now and then. But it's time out. I think last week I was intentional about sitting at the table with Aiden. And it just changed the entire environment. Just sitting down. And as you were talking, Reverend Paris, it made me think not only for us, we can't go out to eat. All right. You get it to go when you go back home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what also made me think is that at the table, our children are not hearing us pray, because most times we do the corporate prayer is when we go out to eat. Or if they have family style, if they go to a Christian academy. So are our children hearing us to pray? Every now and then, Aiden will do something you might need to ask God about that. And it might come off a little sarcastic, but what I'm trying to do is, hey, you can talk to God about this. When he wakes up in the morning, hey, good morning. Did you pray? Did you use the bathroom? Intentional, trying to get him in those rhythms. And then eventually I can use the word of spiritual disciplines. But whoa, slow yourself down. How are you starting your day? What are you doing throughout your day? We just don't get up and just go. But we're losing that, even with our kids, because it's like, you ain't got to get up an hour before school. You go over 20 minutes, get you a hot rag. You log on.
Reverend, you telling on yourself, man. You telling
on yourself.
Listen. But that's the reality. I mean, for us, we could have an hour, straight, because, I'm a little OCD like that. But that's what these kids are doing. They're not getting out. Like, literally, one school, I won't call them out, they posted it for their spirit week was no pajamas day.
Oh, wow.
That just made me like, and then you go through and you looking like these kids are really in class with a bonnet at home underneath the covers.
Oh, no.
I'm not saying, I'm not going against it. I'm not shaming them for it. But what I'm saying is they're going and moving, just getting through the next task, just going through the next task. And it's, how do we slow down and be intentional in our spiritual discipline, our faith development? Is somebody speaking to my issues? Because it's more than a pandemic. We got racial unrest.
Yep.
We're seeing issues in the medical. And now they're also seeing their friends flip on them, especially in the South Florida region. Not everybody is created equally. Now we're seeing mama stressed because of jobs and daddy stressed because of jobs. I had to have a reality on my transition here that when money doesn't line up, I get stressed. And so I have to, that was my reality. So my kid might see it. And, you guys know I was in Atlanta for a little bit, and I was like, well, it'd be cheaper if you get this. So now everything Aiden thinks now is about money, and it's good that you're conscious about it, but I don't want you to take on my stress.
Right.
And so we have to really look at, our kids are dealing with a whole lot. Senior proms, senior pictures look different.
Yeah.
Junior prom looks different.
Yeah.
8th grade formals. It is the youth trips in the summer look different. In my community, they normally go to the lodge every winter. And I told them, listen, under my watch, I am not taking a busload of kids in this COVID environment on a trip.
We were on our board meeting last night for the East Coast Baptist Association, and our president of the Congress of Christian Education announced that this year we're going to do it virtually again. And I was relieved that he made that progressive announcement, because most of us are praying and hoping that, because of the vaccinations and our rollout of it, that we'll be back to semi-normal by summer. But so the Congress of Christian Education takes place the third week of July every year. Now, my children have been involved in that since they were little, since they were like middle school age. They love it. They look forward to it. Cannot wait. We've got others in our church that can't wait to be a part of that, no matter where it is, whether it's here in Miami or at some other part of the state. They can't wait to be a part of that. And so now we're losing folks because we don't have that contact and that continuity. So we're trying to find ways to create space. And I've got to give President Parrott, his name is Benjamin Parrott. I got to give him a lot of credit because he did step out and do some very progressive things last year to kind of to try to keep our youth engaged, but it's just not the same. And if I don't know if you all saw this, but this morning, y'all know me, I follow politics. But this morning I saw a post from Now This Politics where they were comparing the Black Lives Matter rallies after the George Floyd incident and the Super Bowl in Tampa. How Black Lives Matter protesters were, they were out there in masks, but they were arrested, and like over 60 people were arrested. And Sunday night, after the Super Bowl was stolen, people I missed that. See, it was smooth. After the Super Bowl was stolen by all of those pass interference flags, they went crazy in Tampa. They were turning over cars. They were climbing lampposts. They were setting fires. They were throwing traffic cones and things at cars, traffic barrels at cars. No arrests. Nobody in masks. Thousands of people in the streets. This thing isn't going anywhere. They are. The CDC had already said the Super Bowl would be a super spreader event. So now we've gotten the different strands from the South African strand, the British strand. So this thing, and the more it spreads, the faster it will mutate. Saying all of that to say, we could be in this position for another year, at least for another year. It's very likely that we will do exactly what we're doing this time last year, this time next year. This time last year, we didn't think there was going to be a problem. I mean, we were, but here we are now. We've had to pivot. So saying all of that to say, how then do we be more intentional about our faith? How do we, so you guys have a different problem than I, and I'm talking too much. I want to get through this, but I got to set it up. Look, you both have young children. I have teenagers who just turned 16 last week, right? So now, whereas you guys are looking for maybe just a little bit of space, I'm looking to close the space because they're in class every day, they're all day. Then after class, they're doing their work. Then after that, they want to get outside. We live close to a park, so I let them walk to the park. And the rule is you can play your sports as long as nobody else is on the court with you, as long as nobody else is on the field with you. So we're good with that. But then when they come back, they're right back up in their rooms, and I'm trying to close that space. So now when we eat dinner, I make them come down and we sit down and eat dinner. But at the same time, there's because I'm not taking them to school and picking them up and doing all these other things, there's actually less interaction while we're in a closer space. Now, how do we overcome these challenges with younger? When they were little, they were all up on me all the time. Now, I'm trying to set appointments with them. I literally have to text them or send a message on Alexa for them to come down and eat dinner. I mean, it's just there are different challenges because they're at different ages. How then do we begin to address as a church? Because the church has to respond to this. The church has to, whether we are gathering or not, the church has to have to respond to this. How then do we begin to address this with our youth? Last thing I want to say, and then it's over to you guys. Not Wall Street Journal. New York Times reported that one group is consistently contracting and spreading the COVID virus, and those are our 18 to 25-year-olds. Consistently contracting and spreading it. Consistently. So now, there's someone in my family actually who has just contracted it, and they're being quarantined right now. So within that age group, we've got to find ways to reach them as well, to say, hey, this is not business as usual. And the more you go out and expose yourself, and bring it back, the longer it takes us to get back to business as usual. How can the church then have a voice and say in that with young adults who are just really, I mean, hey, when I was 18, I was footloose and fancy free, man. I mean, come on. And I understand you want to get out, you don't want to sit around your folks all day. You want to have some type of activity, some type of life. But how then does the church begin to step in? Because this is a great time to do ministry. I do not agree with many things that the televangelists say, but one thing I agree with is this: never miss a crisis. This is a great time to do ministry. But if we're counting on doing the same thing the same way, we've just sounded the death knell for our ministry. It's a great time. How do we begin to address this with our youth? I said too much. Forgive me.
No, I think that was good. And I was taking some notes because I got to get, my brain goes. So I really had to write down some of what you said and some of my thoughts about it. I think that in the same way that it requires intentionality for the church, it requires intentionality for parents, right? So with my children, you know, they're sitting downstairs not too far from me when they're on their Zoom. My son will have on headphones if my daughter's in a session, or if I'm on the call or something, but for the most part, he's not wearing headphones. I'm not listening 100%, but I'm, I got them parent ears on, right? So I'm able to catch, and then the assignments that he does, I see the assignments that he does. I go on his Google Classroom and I see what he's turning in and how he's doing and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm able to incorporate the things that I hear from just being in his world as much as I am into the lives and the things that way that we're engaging in the house. And the same is true for church, right? I'm listening in on what they're doing with church, and I'm incorporating it. Last week he got in trouble for doing some stuff he shouldn't have been doing. So he's into Beyblades. I took his Beyblades from him, right? I know how many Beyblades he has. He has 23. He gave me 20. I counted. Of course I did, right? I didn't tell him I counted. So about 2 hours later, he comes to me and he says, I didn't give you all my Beyblades. And I'm like, oh yeah? He said, where are they? I said, where are they? He said, they're over there. I kept them because I wanted to, keep on playing with them. And I said, well, I'm glad that you decided to be honest with me. So we talked about it for a minute. He says, he said, I just couldn't stop thinking about the word honesty. And I'm like, okay. So I said, well, let's talk about it. And I said, well, it sounds like God was speaking to you. He said, how you know it was God speaking to me? I said, well, tell me about what you were feeling. And he was talking about how honesty was just pervading his thoughts, and he just had to come and be honest and confess, right? And so that was something that they were doing in church months ago, right? But we kept that conversation up at home about it because it's just a season of life that we are in, right? And because he gave me the other ones, he was rewarded, right? Hey, I'm not going to add any more time on because you were honest, right? And I told him that I already knew, right? Now this is a 7-year-old example, right? But it lays a foundation. If I know anything about you, Pastor Paris, is that you have been just as intentional as a parent and laying those same kind of foundations with your boys, right? And not to say the parent hasn't been that intentional, it's not necessarily too late to start, right? But it just requires stepping into their worlds, and being and knowing what's happening in school and figuring out how can you incorporate that, knowing what they might be learning in church and how can you incorporate that at home. I think that putting appointments on their calendar, that's gold right there. That's money in a bank. Put it on their calendar. Y'all going to the park? Hey, I don't mind going out there with you all, because the more that you can enter their world, right? I think that's the more so. A lot of times parents don't always want to enter their children's world because I'm not interested in Beyblades, right? I'm not trying to be running around no field, right? But the more you enter their world and the more you enter their space, the greater trust that you gain with them, right? And again, the more credit you have in their stock you have with them, in order to really just engage some of those other kind of conversations, right? A lot of times, parents who have not necessarily been having faith conversations with their kids are hesitant to begin because, teenagers are so distant. They're in their room. If you open the door, they're like this, And it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, you know, kind of a thing. And parents can sometimes be intimidated by that. You know, parent might not want to necessarily say it, but it can be intimidating to, especially if you want to have a conversation that you might be uncomfortable having, have not necessarily been having, you know, and then you enter a room or a space and then you're welcome with the, nah, I'm good. You know, a lot of parents might fall back. But I think it's important to remind parents just because your child might look like a grown up and might be mature doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need you. And it's important to remind parents of just how much their children still need them. And a lot of times parents, as students get older, parents struggle with seeing how their kids need them, because I know how my children need me. I mean, I'm very clear at this point in life. But as they get older and they become a lot more independent, it's challenging to see to make those shifts and adjust in those ways, right? And I think that the way that the relationship begins evolving in those teenage years is it should continue evolving into adulthood as your children adult, because parenting a young child and a teenager and an adult is very different, but it's a part of that cycle and evolution and how things evolve as you parent a person, right? And the more you're able to really just even engage in some conversations with your children, it sets you up to be able to engage your adult child, and it gives you more leverage as your children gets older to just continue engaging their thoughts, and you being able to connect with them in ways that they need to be connected, you know. And one other piece to that is one of the things that I like encouraging parents to do, if you have never really had any kind of faith conversations with your children, and you want to begin now. Someone told me years ago, if you don't know where to begin in a conversation, start with your truth, right? If the truth is, we probably should have been having this conversation for many years now, and we have not. And it is my fault. And I would love for us to start having these conversations now. It's going to be awkward in the beginning, but eventually, hopefully, you all can get through that awkwardness, because, you know, it's just so the benefit of it is so much greater, and the influence that parents have is so much greater than they probably really, really realize.
I think you're on it. The word that comes out is connect. So we're looking at engage and connect. And so how do we connect these pieces? And so when I'm looking from the kinder to sixth grade piece is, what do they want to do? So intentional movie nights, intentional, hey, every now and then, I'm not a fan of the Blades, but at third X, you got me, Aiden. I hope he's not listening. Because I really want to show that, hey, daddy can get on this floor, especially for me, because I work with other children. Is it, hey, I'm going to spend time with you. I'm going to let you select the movie. He's innocent. He wants to be involved in the cooking. Listen, Ada, I'm not even that much of a great cook, so like I need my space to think, okay? But because you want to be a part of that process, I'm going to invite you into that process. Letting them, even if you're ordering your groceries online, hey, what do you think? What do you want? Do you actually like this? Because I think Reverend Kenneth was on it, is they're a person. And we want things to go back, but I believe God is telling us to shift, to pivot, and to rethink and reimagine. I really believe we didn't get it right in 2020. And 2021 is the year of you for me. Is how are you looking at this? Most of the frustration is not with the child, it's with you, because the way you was raised, how your mama was raised, how Big Mama was raised, all of that plays into all these layers of effect. And so we have to begin to shift our mind process. Let me bring you along. This is why we do this. So, hey, I'm giving you boundaries and I'm telling you this because of XYZ. So how does the church get involved in that? Is, hey, those reminders on Sunday morning, we give all these announcements, and really you can plug them on Facebook, lead them announcements. The people who never read them still ain't gonna read them, still ain't gonna click on the video. And so now, hey, let's add a wellness tidbit. So every now and then through our online Zoom children's church, I'm dropping a wellness video or reminders, hey, get outside. One time I gave a challenge. I said, hey, go and play your video game. Ask your dad to go play a video game. And the kid response was, I'm not, my daddy's not going to do it. And it sunk me. And because I know his daddy, I was about to text him, because you got to meet and be a part of these kids' lives. You're part of it. They see you on every conference call. They see you answering everybody's stuff, but not their stuff.
Right.
And so we have to connect where they're at. So now we shift to our older kids. Okay, you don't want me in your room, but I'm in here. We ain't got to talk. And you shouldn't make them talk. Be in their space. And when they say something to you, be present. One of the things I was working on before I got lazy at is when Aiden asked me a question, putting my phone down and listening. And intentionally listening. I like the Alexa idea. Hey, shoot them a screenshot. Hey, this is what we thinking about dinner. Well, today's your night to cook dinner. I'm giving you those responsibilities, those healthy boundaries, but also I want to see what you want to do. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm not going to complain that you miss, because that's all they hear is us constantly complaining. How do we add compliments to our regimen? Encourage. Hey, I like the way you went ahead and put up those dishes. I'm in your space. Yep. Hey, you on Twitch? Show me how this game works. This what y'all be playing? I'm not criticizing it. But also I'm putting it in piggyback, so when that right opportunity for evangelism comes, I can drop the seed. But I think part of this is we got to be comfortable with our story. One of the things I learned in youth ministry was I'm not stretching my story anymore to work with a certain population. I did not, that ain't me. Like certain things I did not do. I didn't roll up behind the school. I didn't skip school. I'm not trying. This is where I'm at. And we also have to be comfortable with saying, I'm sorry. I was getting on Aiden. I'm like, man, you sitting down here ain't doing nothing. You got work to do. And then I looked over to the paper. He had half of the sentence. He was just stuck on a word. And I had to say, I'm sorry. I did not see it. Yes. But it's being comfortable with that space, with our teens. Like, I understand. Some of them are feeling themselves, smelling themselves, and they wish they had relationships, but they don't.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And it's okay. And so it's just finding those ways to meaningfully connect, whether it's doing each other nails or doing a challenge, like a TikTok challenge. And whoever gets the most views on your page, or you could do a poll and say, hey, you get a prize, something that they like. We keep wanting, for me, we want our kids, they're like a square, and we just keep putting this round cylinder in it, and there's all this empty space, and it's just like, no, let's fill it up with what they want. Let's fill their bucket up and stop trying to make them a little mini us.
Right.
I don't. Yes. Let's read. Listen, I understand, dude. You want to do this and this and that, and I'm all about those healthy boundaries. But I think that also comes where the church comes into play and just be like, "Hey, parents, this week is our woosah brief. We woosah this week. Students, this week, hey, the challenge is simply this: do one chore every day on time." But our students got to hear that we recognize them from the pulpit. Our parents got to know that we recognize them from the pulpit.
Oh, wow.
Singles, young adults, because we're in it. We're really in it. But you tell me Black Lives Matters, but you're not telling me about my child matters. Right. And that I can see this teacher is not meeting my students' needs, or this Common Core math. I was YouTubing like I didn't know how to count to 12. Like, 10 frame. Whoa. Like,
it'll make you think it will.
That ain't the truth.
Change math. What was wrong with it the way it was?
Right.
I mean, what would happen? I mean, I literally found a clip that was 2 minutes to solve it. and it's a ministry. They do this. They insert their children's ministry inside of their Sunday morning broadcast. It's about 5 minutes, and they give another hymn of praise, and they go into the message. But then what if at the end we do a homework tidbit on our social media? Like, it's apps out there, you can scan the work and it'll tell you how to do it.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
And these tools where you don't have to get frustrated. My mom gave me a tool maybe 2 weeks ago. Says it's not Aiden, it's you. Stop trying to do your work and his work at the same time. Go ahead and knock his out and do your work. And when I tell you, my life has been much easier. You know, I might send her a tithe, but you know, it really has worked. But our parents need those tools to say, hey, try this. What if the church reimagines, says, all right, we're gonna do popcorn kits. It's 20 popcorn bags in a box. Throw some candy in it and a Capri Sun. We good.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think I'm just saying, whatever is done when it comes to you know, your children, your teens, I think consistency is key. You know, people sometimes in Reverend Franklin, I'm like you, I might start doing something and all of a sudden, you know, you get lazy, but you forget with it. It hasn't become a routine yet, so you just fall off from doing it. But I think that consistency, the more you do it, the more normal it will become for your family, and the more your children will expect it, and they'll just fall in line. You know, if something is put on a calendar, you know, that's on your calendar, the adult's calendar, just as much as it's on the student's calendar, your child's calendar, right? Because if your child makes plans with friends, you know, on Friday at 9, watching a movie, the adult's going to have a problem. But if the adults are doing something, it's acceptable and it's okay. A lot of times in most homes, that's not real. You know, that's not okay. If you have something on a family calendar, it's on a family calendar, and keep it there and stick to it and honor it, you know. And the more consistently that you do things, the more normal they become, and you'll start seeing a lot more, you know, just engagement and benefit from doing those things.
Can I ask a question about the family calendar? How do we...
Second, Reverend Franklin, I just wanted to, I meant to say this at the outset, but beloved, if you have questions for our panelists, you're more than welcome to put them in the comment section, and we can post them for them to answer. Go ahead, Reverend Franklin.
Sorry about that. How do we put meat on that bone? How do we set up a family calendar?
So I think so for me personally, I think that I think you said a huge part of it, especially as your children get older, engage their thoughts, you know, like, hey, let's figure out together. So as 2021 was starting, again, my kids are 4 and 7. We put together what our family's goals were going to be for 2021. I had certain categories that we were looking at, gave them different examples, and got everybody's input. These are our family goals when it comes to financial, physical, relational, and I forgot what the other one is. But we talked through each of those different categories, right? And got their input. Everybody put their heads together and figured it out. I think the same is true when it comes to a family calendar, especially with the teenagers. You know, they need to be able, because otherwise, if you don't have their buy-in, they're not going to want to do it. And it's going to be, you know, kicking and screaming the entire time. So you have to have their buy-in. And if you, anytime, even this is how things, you know, anytime you present to someone, okay, here's the plan, then the only person who has ownership of it is the creator. And when everybody doesn't have the same stock and investment in it, you're not going to commit to it in the same kind of way, you know? So I just say, you know, when it comes to it, whatever the family calendar is, sit down, figure out what's realistic for your family. Are we putting something on the calendar once a month? Because if you can do once a month, that's still good. If you all can do something once a week, that's great too, you know? You know, as children evolve and get older, you know, certain things are just not realistic. You know, when it comes to just like, parents aren't always tucking their kids in, you know, when they might be teenagers, you know. As long as my kids let me tuck them in, guess what? I plan on being right there beside you, rubbing your face and giving you kisses, as many kisses as I can, right? Until you say, hey, this is weird, you know?
Yeah.
But so when the kids are younger, those normal routines, like you're pretty much putting your kids in bed every day. So what can be your family routine, something that's a norm that you all do? You're typically giving your kids a bath. Pre-COVID, I hope people were giving kids baths every day. And mid-COVID, I hope you're doing it at least every other day, right? Kids are getting baths. I'm just being honest about what that is. Reverend Franklin said he just take a wash rag and throw it on the boy's face.
Oh,
It was 20 minutes before class. So that was you, Reverend. That wasn't me. But so those times of the day when you are normally together, how can you maximize on those times when you all are together? You know, hey, we can't have family dinner every day together, every day, but we're going to have family dinner together at least twice a week and put it on the calendar. You know, so just whatever. I mean, maybe it's this year we want to climb a mountain, you know, and then just figure out, hey, that's a good idea, something we want to do together, and just putting it on the calendar and just sticking to it.
You know, I'm glad that, and I think that because we've been we've had to be in. I think that it's good for us to really talk about. I was more, as I envisioned this, I was more focused on like how can the church provide these resources, but I think the dog is more important than the tail in this case. And the body of it is, what is the family? How can the family see? The church informs the family informs the church. So, you know, I just think it's been very helpful for me to just talk about and just doing a family calendar, that little activity. About 5 years ago, the boys were 10 or 11, and we had some friends come over one night, and we just made out our vision boards. You know, we just had old magazines and cut up old magazines and made our vision boards, and we would check off the things that we were able to accomplish over that year. And I think that even though they're much older now, it's still important for us to still say that family is where your vision becomes reality. Family is the fertile soil into which you plant your vision and gives your vision life. And I think that that's really important for us, especially since we now have to be in proximity with one another. You know, it hasn't been pleasant for everybody to be with family. It hasn't been. It has not been pleasant for everybody. You know, when the schools first shut down, that was revealed that children were in some very abusive situations, and not always physically or sexually, but in other times emotionally, which is just emotionally and verbally, which is just as damaging as those other forms. So how then, and I think that we've already touched on this question, but if we could just tease this out in the last few minutes, how then do we as youth pastors, as pastors, begin to shape ministry around the needs of our youth in this specific time? Because as you guys have spoken about, you know, hey, it's no prom. I feel sorry for my nephew. He graduated in 2020. He didn't have a prom. He didn't have a graduation. You know, all of those things, you know, he didn't have a spring trip. All of those things we look forward to was all mixed for him. And then he's a college football player, but where they play, they pushed the season back. So he couldn't even play. So how then does the church begin to insert itself? One more thing. When y'all were talking about, you know, putting yourself in that space, I do that. And I had to tell somebody a few weeks ago, now look, I'm going to get like Almeda, my mom, who reminded me when I was 16, you know, yeah, your door you might have hinges, but you won't have a door. You're trying to lock people out. You know, these doors can't come off. She said it very smoothly. Very smoothly. These doors can't come off the hinge. You know, so you ain't got to have a door. You got a room, but you ain't got to have a door. So, you know, I go in and I do try to, you know, in my goofy dad way, try to insert myself in a playful way because, you know, they are teens and they are temperamental. So then how can the church be in that same way, not necessarily intentionally goofy, but necessarily intentionally letting people know we are here for you. That's been very difficult, as I found as being a pastor. It's been very difficult letting people know that we're here for you. And everybody wants you. Well, you can call us. You can do that. Okay, we do those things, but there are other ways too. How do we let people know consistently we're here for you? We want to be here for you and help you through this time.
So for me, Pastor Jamal Bryant said this in the beginning of the pandemic: we need to be high tech and high touch. And so one of the things that I do when I'm consulting the youth ministry in my area is, hey, go on their turf, but also is being intentional. So you're saying you want them to call you if they need something, you call them. One of the things is I realized last year was, if I can teach you Monday through Friday, and I'm a youth pastor, I have my credentials and all this stuff. Oh, we're gonna do some children's church videos. Now that led me to teaching other kids, but however, it's being intentional in that space. Is having the church providing these resources as, hey, we can connect, but it's also giving them what they need. So it's not for IT 2-hour long children's church. We're 30 minutes to an hour. That's the goal, because our kids have been on Zoom. Some of them are in the classroom. It's understand that our kids don't want to have these long drawn out conversations. They mama is listening, so they ain't gonna tell you too much. So don't force it. Don't force them to turn on their camera, because some of them don't have a clean background, or they got too many people in the house and they know it, or mama's lighting up, whatever the case may be is. And so we have to be intentional. How do we provide resources? As, hey, we create a YouTube, and these are some vetted sources that we believe align with our theology. How do we post something on social media that they like because a lot of them are not on Facebook. So how do we create an Instagram, and it might not get all the attractions that you want, but if you put it in a story, you post it, they might not like it, but they might see it.
Right.
And so we have to begin to set those seeds. Or who's that person when we meet for prayer, praying for our youth? You got one job. It's to remind us every time we pray for the students of Miami-Dade.
Right.
Yep.
You got one job every time we come to the steward board meeting. I mean, it's not steward board, sorry. The deacon board meeting or the church planning meeting. What are we doing for our students? When the last time we talk about a family calendar, how do we infuse the family and church calendar into the school calendar? So our babies are still in school. They're still getting report cards. So first one to send pastor a pic, or the church secretary or church inbox, we can send y'all a gift card for Amazon. We can send you pizza to the house. It's reimagining ministry. One of the things that I wanted to do is figure out, how do I send pizza to all of the kids? The issue is with my VPN, it's really hard, but you can do that. You got a large family. You know what? Grocery on us today. And that could be a small $50. Hey, we're going to send y'all groceries of the basics. Or when is the last time, or we think about, hey, for example, you have a huge parking lot. Why are we all 6 spaces out, picnic at the church? We got limited first come, first serve. Get your slot and to do it. Or let's all watch the same movie and discuss. But then also on the pulpit is, hey, Miami-Dade, we praying. We hear y'all going back to school. Principal so-and-so, we know you're here. When do we know where all our kids go? 1 year we sent, and one of the contexts is had their youth ministry, our students, to give something to the teacher or a classmate. Hey, we're thinking about you. Go to the dollar store, everybody get 5 cards, take them to the church. Hey, for Valentine's Day, and you still got time to do it. And we're going to drop these off at different schools, and we're going to do it. Because people got to know that they're being seen, they're being heard. We're talking to their issues. Yeah, Moses is great, Daniel's great, David's great, Jesus is great, but we're going through real issues. And so over the pulpit, we also, even in the prayer, oh Lord, touch them kids. Like we really have to. They have to know that our church cares. We're in Black History. We could do record yourself against a white blank wall. And what is your vision of Black Lives Matters? What does it mean to you? One of the questions we asked was, now that we have the first female vice president, how are you going to keep the door open? And it stumped everybody. But how do we do that? Or I constantly, in our context, Reverend Candace is, to me, is a role model in so many ways, because in our Zion is one of the first full-time staff female youth pastors, living history. And so we have to be able to have those intentional dialogues, understand they're not going to be quick. Not everybody's going to come out. Not everybody's going to view it at the same time, but being very intentional, very practical. If your kid is working, maybe they need a bus card. You know what? Hey, here's a bus card. You know what, Mom? We know at the church, we know you're doing a good job, and I just want to call for you. I'm not trying to collect no tithe. I ain't trying to collect no offering. I just want to see, are you okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm shameless plug, also checking on your pastors, because
that's true.
That is needed. So shameless plug on that. And then I'll mute.
Reverend Candace?
I honestly don't have any more ideas. I think Reverend Franklin did a phenomenal job of giving a lot of really, really, really good ideas. I think what he said spoke directly to what Reverend James commented on here. Reverend James, someone who served with all of us over at IT. But she says that so many churches view youth ministry as an afterthought, very little effort put into it and no budget allocations. And I think that if you want to directly figure out how you cannot do that, everything that Reverend Franklin said is what you can do. When you're praying, slide in, and also while you're praying for the single mother, and while you're praying for the parent who's trying to figure out how to pay their bills, slide in, and for the kid who's being bullied, and for the kid who's got a big test this week, and for the kid who's got a big game coming up, or for the kid who's heading to college and doesn't know where the money is going to come from. You can go on a whole list of ways that you can just incorporate it in your sermons, in your prayers, in your worship, that just makes a child or a student feel like they see me.
Right. And I appreciate everything of what you all have said, but if I could just to remind this young brother of the high esteem and regard that I hold for him, you said something extremely key. Other than the nuts and bolts and brass tacks that you gave us, just about the low-hanging fruit, the things that we can do to make you feel seen and felt. You said, make sure somebody's always praying for them. Mm-hmm. That's where the ministry will spring from. Our prayers, our concern, I don't like to say service as much as I like to say solidarity. The reason why is because there's this cognitive distance when we start talking about service, or we're going to do community service. And so then the immediate thing that comes to folks' minds is, if you're a teenager or a middle schooler, I'm gonna get community service hours. So then it's not about serving the community as much as it's about you. And so then there's this automatic disconnect, this automatic cognitive distance and even dissonance with community service. But when we have community solidarity, how can we then, if you're truly in solidarity with someone, you're praying for them. You're truly praying for them. You're remembering them in prayer. You're remembering them in all that you do. You're really parenting them. Not to say that you have the authority over them, but that you want to walk with them. There is no stage of my child's life in which I don't want to be involved. Now, there are some activities I don't necessarily want to be a part of, but there's no stage of their life where I don't want them to feel like they can come to me or I can have access to them. And I think that's a big part of the outlook that ministry must retain. We want to be with you at every stage of your life. That's how we build intergenerational ministries. That's how we build intergenerational churches. We want to walk with you at every single stage. Beloved, we are at the close of our time. I know we're streaming, but I promised my folks that I wouldn't go over time. So 5 minutes, they're gonna put, that's grade me on the curve. But I want to give you all the final word, if you would. Any final thoughts?
For me, it's just be intentional. My slogan is connect, commit, watch God transform, and serve others. And as we look at what does 2021 looks like, is reimagining ministry by connecting, committing, watching God transform, and serving others. Let's not look back to our old Sunday schools, our old church, old leadership, but let's rethink. Technology is great. I believe in being high touch and high tech. How do we touch them on Zoom? How do we touch them on Instagram? How do we touch them in the pulpits? How do we touch our teachers that are guiding them? How do we connect with our parents? Hey, what do you need? How do we give you religious education materials? Because we do want you to grow in the grace and the knowledge of Christ. But also I want you to see that I'm living it. My experience is real. I want you to connect with my experience of like, today was rough. Some days I literally tell my, your teacher gave a lot of work. I'm acknowledging, I know you got a lot of work. But also we're going to get through this and I know you can do it. Slow yourself down, connect with your children, commit, watch God transform, and serve others. And thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this panel. And I look up to you too.
Look up to you. Thank you.
Just something really, really quick. I appreciate you, Reverend Franklin. I really do. I'll tell you more about that later. But one thing, just really, really, really quickly, how we, the church, show up for our children, youth, and families in these times can potentially determine how they think God showed up for them in some of the most challenging times of their life. We have a responsibility as a church to show up, because one of my mentors used to say, God chooses to have no hands but our hands and no feet but our feet. So it's us who we have to do the work to show up.
My Lord, Reverend Candace, that's amazing.
Drop your Cash App. That was good. We got to send you an offering on that one. That was good.
Listen, I heard Stacey Abrams say on the interview the other day, "You stupid." So I feel free to say, "You stupid." She liberated me.
I told y'all 2 things at the outset. See, my folks don't believe me when I speak, but I told y'all 2 things at the outset. Not my panelists, but our guests. I told y'all first that Reverend Franklin was a mad genius. He's an evil genius. And I told y'all that Reverend Candace, nobody knows what she does, and that's why she can charge so much. And that's why she can charge so much. That's what you just said right there. She's got this hidden wisdom right there. And you're right. Drop your Cash App so Reverend Franklin can send you his check. Hallelujah. Beloved, this has been amazing to me. I'm always pleased to talk to you all. And we really, though, I know everybody says this. But I truly mean it. We've got to connect more often. It's so easy. Yeah. I'll never forget one of the first things when I came to Dr. Edward Wheeler and told him that I felt called to ministry. One of the first things he said to me was, "It's a lonely profession." And because you get so into the work, and if you're like me, you're in your heads, you're trying to figure it out, trying to hear from the Lord. It's very easy for you to isolate and not isolate unintentionally. So I'm blessed. I love y'all. I'm thanking the Lord for you. I'm thanking the Lord for the Emmanuel Temple, for Reverend John and Reverend Maria White. I see some other folks from Emmanuel Temple on our chat with us.
I had that Mallory in there before she gets you.
Oh yes, Reverend Maria.
That's not-
Right.
Sorry.
Edit that part out, but I'm thanking the Lord for them and how the Lord has used them to be a blessing, not only in our lives, but in the life of South Florida as well. So thank you all so much for everybody that joined with us. Grateful to God for you. Tomorrow we will be on again at 10 a.m. We'll be having a conversation with a young lady that I know and love. She's one of my homegirls from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. She is a Princeton graduate, and she worked with us there at the Concord Baptist Church of Christ in Brooklyn, New York. We'll be on talking tomorrow with Reverend, I was about to say Reverend Candace Austin Wynn, but no, we'll be on talking tomorrow with Reverend K. Monet Rice. Y'all gonna love this conversation. We're talking about decolonizing Christianity. So please tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Love you all. Thank you all so much. God bless you. And thanks, of course, to our media team. God bless you.